we doing out there tonight, Ball Nation? This is Frank. This is the House of Orange Sports Channel coming at you. The big news of the day today in college football is not necessarily about Tennessee. It's Bill Belichick to North Carolina. This is one when Mac Brown was let go. This is not one I would have seen coming right here. I would have probably suspected, a mid-major coach who's hot getting that opportunity because Mac Brown's 73 years old. And they're talking about, well, maybe he's too old. But what's North Carolina do? They turn around and go to the 72-year-old Bill Belichick. But there's rumors, he interviewed for jobs last year. It seemed like he was a pretty good candidate for the Atlanta Falcons. It did not happen. You would have thought, well, maybe this offseason it would work out in some capacity, but it didn't. And then after Mac Brown, there was news that Belichick had interviewed with North Carolina. It's picked up steam along the way, and now it appears to be the case that Belichick is heading to North Carolina. How does that affect Tennessee? Well, number one, looking at kind of branching out a little bit more outside of Tennessee on here. But I think it's relevant because you go back to September when Tennessee played in Charlotte. Some of you people around rock, why do we play these neutral site games? They make no sense. And I said, going to Charlotte makes sense because Tennessee is trying to put a footprint in North Carolina. Well, you got the top two, according to On3, players in the country in this cycle, David Sanders Jr. and Isaiah Campbell. Tennessee has the top player in the cycle for 2026 in North Carolina in Faison Brandon, number one quarterback. According to 24/7 Sports, the number one player in the country. Tennessee has had numerous guys on campus from the 2026 class from North Carolina. How's it affect Tennessee? When you're trying to, plant your flag, make your footprint known in that state, now you get the all-time winningest Super Bowl, or let me rephrase that, all-time Super Bowl winningest coach in Belichick in here. He's won 6 Super Bowls, more than any other head coach in NFL history. Chuck Noll's the next closest at 4. Belichick was 6. Players are going to see that. They're old enough to know who he is at this point. They know, this guy won Super Bowls. This dude won Super Bowls with Tom Brady. It didn't end well for Belichick in New England. But make no mistake about 6 Super Bowls. Pretty impressive stuff. Where do players want to get to? They want to get to the NFL. In an interview last week with Pat McAfee, they were asked because Belichick, he shows up on the Manning Cast. He has a weekly spot on the Pat McAfee show. He appears on other stuff along the way. And he said he was asked about college. He detailed it on McAfee. He said, if I was in a college program, the college program would be a pipeline to the NFL for the players that have the ability to play in the NFL. It would be a professional program, training, nutrition, scheme, coaching techniques that would transfer to the NFL. It would be an NFL program at a college level and an education that would get the players ready for their career after football, whether that was in their college career or the end of their pro career. But it would be geared toward developing the player, time management, discipline, structure, and all that. I feel very confident that I have the contacts in the National Football League to pave the way for those players that would have the ability to have the opportunity to compete in the National Football League. Whether they're good enough or not, I don't know, but they would be ready for it. I don't have any doubt about that. This is a guy, again, you've won 6 Super Bowls. You know a little bit about what you're doing. And regardless of how it ends, you still have to get there. So you got to think, what's NIL going to be like at North Carolina? You got to think if they're bringing him in, it was said the deal was 3 years, $30 million. That's $10 million per year. That's going to put him in the upper echelon of coaching salaries. North Carolina is not committing to that if they don't have an NIL program in place for it. Now, how will he do? I'm skeptical of it because a guy at that age coming in the first time, I don't know what the long-term effects are. It could be one of those where he, hits it out of the gates with this transfer portal window open. They're getting him in at the right time. Does he go that transfer portal route now and get some of these big time guys in there? Obviously, they have the quarterback Bryce Baker that they're having to get back in the fold, who did not sign for it. But, getting back to how does this affect Tennessee? You look at the 2026 cycle for Tennessee. Again, I go back to Faison Brandon committed, number 1 player in North Carolina. Kendra Harrison, the number 2, committed to Oregon, but Tennessee was heavily involved in that one. I don't know that Kendra Harrison gets back. I don't know if he reopens a commitment or anything like that, but it is a guy Tennessee was involved with. Is he good? He wants to play football and basketball at the next level. Is he good enough to do it at Tennessee or North Carolina? To me, though, is a Faison Brandon. If North Carolina comes in NIL money, they come in with it, selling it with Bill Belichick, with Tom Brady. Could that open the eyes of Brandon? I'm not saying it will. I'm not saying that by any means whatsoever. But it's a year until Faison Brandon will sign with Tennessee if he stays in the fold. Others, to me, that it could impact, potentially, and maybe not. But I look at defense. Belichick is known as a defensive mind. But I also look at the state of North Carolina with Belichick's contacts. How could that impact things? Especially, he opens up those line of communications with these high schools. He starts to build those relationships. You got Rodney Dunham, a guy who's been on Tennessee's campus numerous times. He's not only a good football player, he's a really good baseball player as well. Well, Tennessee satisfies both those requirements, but also Belichick turns North Carolina around. North Carolina has a really good baseball program as well. You've got the Harris brothers. You got Aiden Harris and Andrew Harris. They've been to Tennessee's campus. Can he affect them potentially? Smoke Matthews, cornerback. The on-3 projection meter, it's not updated. He's a 4-star. Smoke Matthews has South Carolina, North Carolina as the projections. Tennessee is heavily involved in that one. I would venture to say Tennessee probably would be hard to beat on that one. But we'll see how it goes. There's a defensive player that could come into it. Leo Delaney, teammate of David Sanders Jr. at Providence Day from North Carolina. He's been to Tennessee numerous times. He's taken his visits. How could that affect him potentially? Xavion Griffin Haynes is another one, 6'6", 220 edge. He's been to Tennessee. He's already shown favor to North Carolina. I don't know that I put much into these crystal ball projections at this point because I don't think you'll see much with them until a guy's ready to decide on it. There's another one with Griffin Haynes. Could, a guy, I'm going down the line here, a Brody Keith, wide receiver out of Charlotte, 6'2", 185. Tennessee's in thick in that one. How could that potentially impact them? When you're Tennessee, when you're trying to put a foothold in the state of North Carolina, if Belichick comes in, if he makes those contacts, they're dishing out this NIL money. He knows how to get guys to the league. He knows what they're looking for. He still has the contacts on it. I have to venture to say this has to have an impact on Tennessee. And any neighboring state, it's going to have an impact on North Carolina State, where they're trying to get, not that they recruit the state that well to begin with. It's going to have an impact on Georgia, Florida, teams that come in every so often, get players. And Tennessee, just when they're getting that momentum going. Again, I'm still skeptical how this is going to go. I don't think 72 years old is your first time to be dipping into the college landscape. I just don't. There's a lot to it. And I think recruiting, Herm Edwards said this the other night on SportsCenter. He said, you're recruiting 24/7, 365 on it. Is Belichick ready for that along the way? It's going to be really interesting to see how he does. He's going to have the right staff in place as well. But that name is going to go somewhere because guys ultimately want to get to the NFL when it's all said and done. Tennessee basically needs to keep doing what they're doing in North Carolina, but they're going to get some more resistance now than when the Mac Brown staff was in place. It's going to happen. How long does it last? There's going to be the new car smell. Does it wear off quickly? I'm really interested to see how that works out, especially as you're getting into that 2026 cycle. There's still a little bit of 2025 left. What impact will Belichick have on that as well? They're having to replace that roster. North Carolina had a little bit of a down year, not what they expected. Where do they go from there? I think I'm very intrigued by it. I will say that I'm very intrigued to see how it works out. And when we go head to head with Belichick for these commitments, I'm curious to see what the North Carolina pitch is. Is it Super Bowls? Is it NFL? Is it NIL? What's going to come into play on that? That's going to bear watching down the stretch as well. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Frank, House of Orange Sports Channel. Make sure you hit that like, that share. If you have not already and you like the content, hit that subscribe button as well. I'd like to get to 3,000 before the year's out, but you know what? We're getting close to 2,400. 2,500 is very realistic. That would be, it's already been a killer year. It's been awesome. Thank you guys so much. Have a great evening. Last but most certainly not least, when it comes to recruiting and all of it, there's never a better time than to wear the orange.